What happens when an African revolutionary leader, celebrated by some as a rising star against Western dominance, suddenly finds himself face to face with the sharpest, most unapologetic conservative mind on America's highest court? Well, you get fireworks and humiliation. Justice Clarence Thomas, a man who rarely speaks but makes every word count, delivered a verbal sledgehammer that left Ibrahim Traoré, the young firebrand leader of Burkina Faso, utterly exposed. And folks, you won't believe what he said. Now, the mainstream media will never show you this clash. They'll either ignore it or try to spin it. But here, we cut through the noise, and what happened in that courtroom was more than just a heated exchange. It was a symbolic showdown between two very different visions of justice, sovereignty and power. To understand why this moment matters, you need to know who these men are. On one side, Clarence Thomas, the longest-serving justice on the U.S. Supreme Court, a man who grew up in the segregated South, endured poverty, and climbed his way to the pinnacle of American law. He's known for his strict interpretation of the Constitution, his disdain for political theatrics, and his belief in personal responsibility above all. He doesn't just argue law, he embodies a philosophy that truth is not negotiable. On the other side, Ibrahim Traoré, the 36-year-old military officer who staged a coup in Burkina Faso in 2022. To his supporters, he's a hero, a man who defied France, kicked out Western troops, and pledged to restore African dignity. To his critics, he's just another strongman in uniform, another revolutionary who promises the people freedom but delivers control. He's charismatic, he's bold, and he knows how to stir up crowds. But charisma can only take you so far when you're standing across from Clarence Thomas in a U.S. courtroom. The tension was thick. Onlookers whispered as Traoré's defense team tried to frame his case around colonial injustice, sovereignty, and Western hypocrisy. They painted Burkina Faso as a victim of centuries of exploitation and Traoré as the brave warrior finally standing up to the empire. But Clarence Thomas wasn't having it. He leaned forward, peered over his glasses, and with that calm, deliberate tone he's known for, delivered the words that silenced the room. Young man, power gained by a gun may impress a crowd, but it cannot withstand the test of justice. You speak of sovereignty, but where is the sovereignty of the farmer whose land is taken, of the dissenter whose voice is silenced? Do not mistake revolution for righteousness. The room froze. Traoré, usually quick with fiery rhetoric, didn't have a rehearsed line ready. This wasn't a rally in Ouagadougou. This was the Supreme Court of the United States. And Clarence Thomas had just stripped away the mask of revolutionary theater. Think about what Thomas really did here. He turned the tables. Traoré came in expecting to play the victim, to leverage history as a shield. But Thomas, who himself grew up under a system that told him he was nothing, refused to let the past be an excuse for authoritarianism in the present. That's the difference. One man endured hardship and built his legacy through discipline and faith in law. The other seized power through force and slogans. And that's why this exchange matters. It wasn't just legal, it was moral. It was the old world of discipline confronting the new world of excuses. And folks, it exposed the hollow core behind much of the rhetoric we're hearing from so-called anti-colonial leaders today. Now, this isn't the first time a self-proclaimed revolutionary has been humiliated by cold, hard truth. Think back to the 1960s, when American radicals tried to justify violence as necessary resistance. Judges back then reminded them that burning cities doesn't equal justice. Or look at Mugabe in Zimbabwe, hailed at first as a liberator, but over time exposed as a tyrant. The pattern is always the same: fiery words, military parades, and then silence when confronted with real accountability. Traoré is following that same script, but Thomas just ripped the pages out. Let's break down Thomas's words, because they cut deeper than you realize. Power gained by a gun may impress a crowd. Translation: charisma and force are cheap currency. Anyone can seize power, the question is what you do with it. It cannot withstand the test of justice. That's the key. Justice is timeless. Guns rust, regimes fall, but justice endures. Where is the sovereignty of the farmer, of the dissenter? This is brilliant. Thomas flips the script. True sovereignty isn't just a nation kicking out foreign troops. It's protecting the individual from oppression, even when that oppression comes from their own leader. Do not mistake revolution for righteousness. That one line dismantled the entire defense. Just because you wrap your rule in slogans of freedom doesn't mean you're free. That, my friends, is why Clarence Thomas is feared and respected. He doesn't shout. He doesn't grandstand. He slices through illusions like a scalpel. Now, ask yourself, why isn't the mainstream talking about this? Why are they hiding this exchange? Because it doesn't fit the narrative. They want you to believe Traore is some kind of African Che Guevara, a hero fighting Western imperialism. But when faced with real accountability, his arguments crumble. And that's dangerous for the elites who thrive on false idols. Instead, they'll flood social media with clips of Traore in military fatigues. Fist raised, chanting about liberation. They'll never show the moment where he was silenced, not by force, but by truth. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. That wasn't the end of the exchange. Because after Thomas's words, Traore tried to recover, and what happened next revealed even more about the clash between raw power and principled truth. And trust me, you need to hear it. So there Traore was, sitting in silence after Clarence Thomas's verbal hammer. You could see the frustration on his face. He's used to applause, chants, and roaring approval. But in that courtroom, the applause never came. Still, Traore wasn't about to back down without a fight. He straightened up, raised his voice, and said, "Justice Thomas, you speak of law, but your law was built on the backs of my people. Your constitution ignored us. Your system oppressed us. Do you not see that my revolution is the correction of history?" Strong words, the kind of words that play well on social media. But Clarence Thomas didn't blink. He adjusted his glasses again and responded, with the kind of calm that can only come from decades of facing down hypocrisy. "History is filled with pain. I lived it. But I did not answer injustice with tyranny. The Constitution you dismiss was not perfect, but it provided the tools to correct itself. I am proof of that. The question, Mr. Traore, is not whether history hurt you. The question is, are you repeating it, or are you rising above it?" Boom, let that sink in. Thomas didn't just defend America, he defended the very principle of progress through law, not through bullets. He exposed the contradiction in Traore's narrative. You cannot claim to fight oppression by becoming the oppressor. This is the heart of the clash. On one side, you have Thomas, a man who believes in enduring institutions, slow but steady reform, and personal responsibility. On the other, Traore, a man who believes in tearing it all down, using force and rewriting the rules in his own image. It's discipline versus defiance, principle versus power, longevity versus spectacle. And in that battle, Thomas's words carried a weight that no slogan could match. Now, ask yourself, which vision do you want for the future? Do you want leaders who seize power and justify it with excuses? Or do you want leaders who build something that lasts, even when the road is hard? That's what Thomas was forcing everyone in that room to confront. This wasn't just about Burkina Faso or the US Supreme Court. It was about the universal question: how do nations heal from injustice? Through discipline and law, or through force and vengeance? Thomas's life itself is the answer. Born into poverty, raised by a grandfather who believed in hard work, he faced segregation head-on. And instead of grabbing a rifle, he grabbed books. Instead of staging a coup, he climbed the legal ladder. His revolution was through perseverance, not destruction. Traore, by contrast, skipped the hard road. He didn't rise through democratic institutions. He didn't endure opposition debates or legal battles. He picked up a gun, seized a government, and declared himself the people's champion. But as Thomas exposed, that's not justice, that's just power with a different face. And yet, the mainstream wants you to cheer for Traore. Why? Because they love chaos when it suits them. They'll call Thomas out of touch, reactionary, even racist for daring to challenge an African leader. But here's the truth: the elites don't care about Burkina Faso. They care about narratives. They care about symbols they can manipulate. And Traore is just another pawn in their game. The exchange ended with one last statement from Thomas. After listening to Traore's team rant about colonialism, imperialism, and victimhood, Thomas leaned back and said, "Mr. Traore, every tyrant in history has justified his rule by pointing to the sins of others. But the measure of a leader is not what he condemns, but what he creates. Tell me when your time is over. Will your people remember freedom, or will they remember fear?" Silence, absolute silence. That was the knockout punch. Not loud, not flashy, but devastating. Because deep down, everyone in that courtroom knew the answer. Think about that. Think about what it means for us. Today, in a world drowning in excuses, in leaders who justify censorship, surveillance, and power grabs by pointing to the evil other side, are we falling for the same trap? Are we mistaking revolution for righteousness? That's why this moment matters far beyond Burkina Faso. It's a warning that power without principle always ends in disaster. And Clarence Thomas, of all people, reminded the world of that truth. So here's the question I leave you with. Who do you believe? The revolutionary with the gun or the justice with the truth? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I want to hear from you. Do you think Thomas was too harsh? Or do you think he exposed Traore for what he really is? And if you found this breakdown eye-opening, don't let the mainstream silence it. Share this video. Send it to friends who need to hear the raw, unfiltered truth. And of course, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell, because we're going to keep exposing the stories they don't want you to know. This clash was just one battle in a much bigger war for truth, and together, we're going to win it.